Breaking news this morning on the Valley Today. 2 children dead and 6 more people hurt after a rollover crash on I-94 yesterday in Stutsman County. North Dakota Highway Patrol says the crash happened 7 miles west of Jamestown shortly before 5 p.m.
An SUV was traveling eastbound when the driver lost control after being passed by a semi-truck. The SUV then left the road and rolled, eventually coming to a rest on its side in standing water. 2 young boys, a 7-year-old and 10-year-old, were pronounced dead at the scene.
5 other children were in that vehicle at the time of the crash, 4 of them suffering minor injuries, but a 9-year-old girl is said to be fighting for her life. She was life-flighted to Sanford and Fargo. The driver of the SUV, identified only as a 30-year-old woman from Cleveland, North Dakota, is suffering serious injuries. She was also taken to Sanford in Fargo by ambulance.
The crash remains under investigation at this time. The name of the driver is expected to be released later today.